Here's the lower intake manifold. I'm trying to hold my hand still here. So this is the factory plenum for the VQ35DE. You can see I've gone through and removed some material, specifically these front runners. The tops of them shaved off, kind of flat. That's the milling that they did on the Motordyne MREV version. And then I had gone in and removed some material from the runners themselves, though not very deep. This would be something that I'll be looking to change here to essentially increase the airflow coming through, remove the casting marks. This finish was due to some misunderstanding I had about the effects of turbulent boundary layers. And then the backside of these runners, they really don't need to have been treated at all, because there's essentially no airflow down in that valley. It's stagnant. These little cups are from the plenum spacer. You can see it on the edge here as well, the spacer. Got the manifold, the upper intake manifold off so I can install the water injection nozzle as well as a intake temperature sensor. They're stacked over here in these pile of parts. There's a sensor, it's the brass thing. The nozzle's under the pile of tools. There's the upper intake manifold. Drop the light, pick this thing up. You can see I've got my oversized throttle body installed on there. That spacer that has to can it off, it's a clearance issue. Quite a pain in the butt to assemble everything. My intake tube here, I could have just skipped having to install the nozzle mount in the first place. Got quite a bit of the E6000 sealant on there. The whole thing ended up, because this is the end that the mass airflow sensor and the front of the intake box is, appears to be throwing water onto the mass airflow sensor, which dramatically messes up the results. Here's the inside of the intake manifold. There's nothing too cosmic about it. A couple of these spacers still on there, all these screws protrude. But I'll be drilling to put the water nozzle up in that throat area where the throttle body comes down, and I'll probably put the air temperature sensor over in this corner so I can see if there's an effect. A misconception I think on the part of the Z community is that the airflow enters the manifold and then flows immediately down into the rear runners, cylinders 5 and 6. But the reality is that air has momentum. Now it's coming around that corner, but I mean all the velocity there, it carries down through the valley, and essentially it wraps around the corner and it comes down over the top. The Nissan fixed that with the 370Z, or the HR motor for the 350Z had two separate plenums. You can see this is a plenum over here, a plenum over there. Ideally you'd feed them from the sides. That's how that engine's fed. But they only, I guess, wanted to put one throttle body, one intake path, one air box, keep the cost down, though they ended up changing that. And so I imagine the air in the middle is essentially vibrating back and forth as it goes, but it's flowing along the inside upper surface of this plenum and then down around the corner, makes the turn into these air boxes, and is drawn, and the firing order alternates between banks. So essentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or I could be backward on my orders right now, but either way it's front to back and it alternates, so you get this evenly spaced set of pulses for each three. Kind of makes a 2 3-cylinder engines working together, and you can get some induction velocity from that. The even firing order gives you an advantage gives you the ability to take advantage of some of the intake tuning resonance. You can't get that in the V8, at least not unless you have a flat plane crankshaft. But this is Nissan's essentially way of patching together a way to make it work. I prefer more intake room, dual plenum, but the HR motor swap into this Z would add quite a bit of extra complexity. So we'll be sticking with the old VQ35. Got a spare one back in the corner, and just making these 3 cylinders work together. I'll probably post back once I've drilled some holes.